Most people walk around wearing a mask, not just in public, but in front of the mirror. They lie to themselves daily, and the tragedy is they don't even realize it. They excuse their laziness, justify their fears, and blame their circumstances. But here's the truth. You cannot build a mind that terrifies people if you're still terrified of facing yourself. Strength begins the moment you stop lying. When you decide genuinely to turn inward and say, okay, what am I avoiding? What am I running from? That's the first step to forging something powerful inside of you. Self-honesty is brutal, and it should be. You need to be willing to sit with the parts of yourself that disgust you, the envy, the weakness, the procrastination, the insecurity. You need to see them not as excuses, not as identities, but as invitations to grow. People avoid this because it hurts. And yes, it does. But pain isn't the enemy. Delusion is. And there is no growth without pain. There's no transformation without confrontation. So you have to ask yourself, would I rather feel the sting of truth now or the agony of regret later? The strongest minds are not the most intelligent. They are not the most educated. They are simply the ones who have made peace with the truth. And that peace doesn't come from ignoring who you are. It comes from knowing it fully, down to the bone, and then deciding what you're going to do about it. Are you wasting time? Say it out loud. Own it. Are you letting fear dictate your choices? Admit it. Because once you name the problem, you can start attacking it. We live in a world that encourages comfort, not clarity. Distraction, not direction. But a mind that truly intimidates others isn't one that floats with the current. It stands firm against it. It says, no, I know who I am. I know where I'm lacking, and I'm fixing it. That kind of mind sends ripples through a room because most people can't even look at themselves honestly, let alone begin to transform. And don't make the mistake of thinking this is a one-time realization. No, this is a daily battle. Every single morning you have to wake up and say, where am I falling short? And not as an act of self-loathing, but as an act of self-respect. The person who is willing to face their flaws is also the person who is capable of reshaping them. That's terrifying to people who are still hiding behind their excuses, hoping no one sees how afraid they really are. You don't get stronger by pretending, you get stronger by facing. You confront the darkness within and you drag it into the light. You name your demons and then you starve them. And the world notices. It feels the difference between someone who's put in the work and someone who's just performing strength on the outside. You want to build a mind that terrifies people, then start by terrifying yourself. Look in the mirror, tear down the lies, and meet who you really are. Because the second you do, you become the one thing this world can't control. Someone who's not afraid of the truth. One of the greatest lies people believe is that they have to feel ready in order to act. That motivation has to come before movement. But if you live your life by that principle, you're finished before you even begin. Because feelings are fickle. They're unstable. One day you feel like showing up and the next you don't. One moment you're inspired, the next you're overwhelmed. If your mind is ruled by how you feel, then your future will be ruled by failure. There is no getting around that. Discipline is what steps in when emotions want to take control. It's what carries you through the days when motivation has gone silent. And those days, those dull, heavy, grinding days, they're the ones that make or break you. That's when most people back off. That's when they choose comfort. And it's also where the strong are born. The person who builds a terrifyingly strong mind is the one who acts not because they feel like it, but because it's what needs to be done. You don't negotiate with your feelings when your goal is transformation. You wake up tired, you move. You feel discouraged, you move. You're not seeing results yet, you still move. Because the one who continues to move forward when nothing is cheering them on, that's the one you should fear. That's the one who builds a kind of momentum the world can't stop. A mind shaped by discipline becomes razor sharp, focused, relentless. And that kind of focus, that kind of consistency, that refusal to be swayed by the emotional tides, that's where real power lives. This isn't about becoming robotic or void of emotion. No, it's the opposite. It's about mastery. It's about recognizing that emotion has its place, but it does not belong in the driver's seat. You don't ignore your feelings. You acknowledge them. You understand them. And then you act in spite of them when they don't align with your vision. Because vision must come first. The mission must come first. People often say, I don't feel like it today, as if that's a valid excuse. But here's the truth. If your goals depend on how you feel, then you don't really have goals. You have wishes. Wishes don't build anything. Discipline does. The greatest minds in history, the ones who shaped the world, who shifted culture, who achieved the impossible, did not get there by listening to their emotions. They got there by disciplining their minds and aligning their actions with their values, not their moods. So you have to decide, are you going to be controlled by the ever-changing weather patterns of your emotions, or are you going to anchor yourself to something deeper, something stronger, something that lasts? You don't build a terrifying mind by doing what's easy. You build it by doing what's necessary, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when no one is watching. Every act of discipline you take carves something deeper into your identity. You stop saying, I can't. You start saying, I will. And when you do that enough times, when you string those moments together day after day, your mind starts to change. You stop needing motivation because your default becomes action. And that is rare, that is powerful, that is dangerous. So if you want to be feared, not for what you say, but for what you consistently do, train your mind to obey your purpose, not your feelings. Let your discipline speak so loudly that the world has no choice but to respect it. Because when discipline becomes your compass, there is nothing that can stand in your way. What you say to yourself when no one's listening will determine how far you go in this life. People are obsessed with external voices, what others think, what others say, what others expect. But the loudest, most influential voice you'll ever hear is the one echoing inside your own head. That's the voice that matters most. And the terrifying thing is most people have no idea how much damage they're doing simply because they've never learned how to speak to themselves properly. You cannot build a strong mind with weak self-talk. If the voice in your head is constantly tearing you down, doubting your potential, telling you you're not good enough, not capable, not worthy, then it doesn't matter how much potential you actually have, you're sabotaging yourself before the world even gets a chance. And that's tragic, because so many brilliant, gifted people never rise, not because others didn't believe in them, but because they didn't believe in themselves. Mastering your inner dialogue isn't about blind positivity. It's not about looking in the mirror and lying to yourself, saying everything's fine when it isn't. It's about speaking with truth, but also with direction. It's about replacing, I'm not good enough, with, I'm not there yet, but I'm willing to do what it takes. It's about stopping the mental spiral before it begins. You don't feed thoughts that disempower you. You interrogate them. You question where they come from. You challenge their authority. Because not every thought you think is true. In fact, many of them are outdated, distorted, infected by years of fear or failure or someone else's opinion. And if you don't examine those thoughts, if you don't start to take control of the narrative, you'll live a life written by someone else's pen. You must become intentional about the words you use with yourself. When you fail, don't say, I'm a failure. Say, I failed this time. When you're scared, don't say, I'm weak. Say, I'm facing something difficult and I will grow through it. That shift is small, but it's powerful. It's what separates the person who gets crushed by setbacks from the one who learns how to rise. That's the mind that becomes dangerous, not because it's perfect, but because it's trained. And training that voice takes time. It takes vigilance. Every time a negative thought creeps in, you have to confront it like an intruder. You stop it, you reframe it, you build new mental pathways, ones rooted in strength, clarity, and purpose. And over time, those pathways become dominant. You start to move differently, speak differently, act differently. and the world begins to respond. People notice when your self-talk is built like steel. They sense it. You walk into a room, and you don't even have to say a word because your confidence is grounded. Not loud, not arrogant, just real. And it's terrifying to people who are still at war with themselves internally, because when you've made peace inside your own head, no one else can touch you. No insult lands, no doubt sticks, no rejection defines you. The most powerful thing you can ever master is your mind. Not the economy, not public opinion, not your circumstances, your mind. And that mastery starts with the words you choose to echo within it. So speak to yourself like someone who matters, someone who has value, someone who is building something unstoppable. Because when your inner voice becomes your greatest ally, the outside world no longer holds the power to break you. The information you consume has an immeasurable impact on the person you become. We live in an age of constant noise, social media, entertainment, headlines, clickbait, distractions. Everywhere you turn, there's something designed to grab your attention, to make you feel something, to sedate your mind, to keep you in a cycle of shallow engagement. But if you want to build a mind that terrifies people, you must first recognize that not all information is created equal. Most people spend their days absorbing nonsense, mindless scrolling, endless entertainment, surface-level chatter. It's easy to get lost in this because it requires no effort. It's the fast food of the mind. You can consume it without thinking, without growing. But here's the truth. What you feed your mind matters. If you want to rise above the noise, you have to actively choose what you allow to shape your thoughts. Knowledge isn't just something you acquire passively, it's something you actively engage with. It's not about reading the easiest thing or watching the most popular video. It's about seeking out what challenges you, what forces you to think critically, to question the world around you, to stretch your mind in ways that are uncomfortable but necessary. Most people never push themselves beyond the limits of what they already know. But the truly powerful minds are the ones that are always hungry for something deeper, something more profound. You have to start being discerning about what you let into your mind. Ask yourself, is this enriching me? Is this making me better? Or is it just filling time? The more you feed your mind with shallow, distracting nonsense, the more it starts to settle for less. It's like feeding your body empty calories. You might feel full for a while, but your energy and strength will eventually falter. Your mind is the same way. If you feed it nothing but surface-level content, that's all it will be capable of. But when you seek out knowledge that challenges you, that requires thought and reflection, your mind begins to transform into something deeper, something more profound. The difference between someone who is truly terrifying in their strength of mind and someone who is easily swayed is in the knowledge they've accumulated. The former is sharp. They understand the world at a deeper level. They've read the great thinkers. They've explored ideas that make them uncomfortable. They've not just passively consumed information. They've wrestled with it, internalized it, and allowed it to change them. And that makes them formidable. The latter, they're lost in distractions, they're tethered to the superficial, they can be swayed by anything that comes their way because they haven't built the mental muscle to withstand the storm. Feeding your mind with quality knowledge doesn't just mean reading books, although that's a powerful tool. It's about immersing yourself in experiences that broaden your understanding. It's about engaging in conversations that challenge your perspective. It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone and exposing yourself to new ideas, new ways of thinking. Every time you do this, you're building something that others can't easily penetrate. You're developing an intellectual armor that makes you dangerous to anyone who wants to pull you into their own limited way of thinking. And don't be afraid to explore topics that aren't easy, that make you uncomfortable, that test your patience. The best knowledge is often the hardest to digest, but it's also the most rewarding. The more you expand your understanding of the world, the more you realize just how little you knew before. And that's liberating. It frees you from the limitations of ignorance. It sharpens your mind, makes you more discerning, more deliberate in your actions. You no longer fall for the distractions. You no longer settle for the shallow. The world is full of noise. But if you want to build a mind that terrifies people, you have to start feeding it with the kind of knowledge that strengthens it, challenges it, and forces it to grow. When you do this, you not only transform your mind, you transform your life. And when that happens, no one can ignore you. There's a powerful quality that separates those who rise above the chaos and those who get swept away by it. And that quality is calm. When the world around you is in turmoil, when everything feels like it's collapsing, when emotions are running high, the person who stays calm becomes a beacon. They become someone others can rely on. They become the person who stands firm in the storm, unaffected by the winds that blow around them. And that is an incredibly rare quality. We live in a world full of distractions, full of uncertainty. Every day brings new challenges, new obstacles, new crises. And yet, in the face of all this chaos, you have the choice of how you will respond. You can either let the noise and confusion dictate your actions, or you can take a step back, ground yourself, and respond with clarity and purpose. The people who are able to do this, they're the ones who command respect. They're the ones who others turn to when things go wrong, because there is nothing more terrifying than someone who can stay calm when everything is falling apart. Staying calm in chaos doesn't mean being emotionless. It doesn't mean ignoring the gravity of the situation or pretending that nothing matters. What it means is that you have developed the ability to control your response to external events. You've trained your mind not to be a slave to the immediate emotional surge. It means that when everyone around you is panicking, you're able to step back, assess the situation, and make deliberate, thoughtful decisions. This doesn't come naturally for most people. It's something you have to cultivate, something you have to practice. And it begins with the understanding that you are not your emotions. Your emotions are real, but they're not who you are. Fear, anger, frustration, these are all natural reactions to stressful situations. But if you let those emotions control you, if you let them dictate your actions, then you're simply reacting like a leaf in the wind. The people who control their emotions are the ones who stand firm. They've mastered the art of pausing before acting, of taking a breath before reacting. In the heat of the moment, they're the ones who can think clearly, make decisions with precision, and move with purpose. This is a skill that can be developed. It starts with awareness. You have to become aware of how you react when things go wrong. Do you panic? Do you lash out? Do you withdraw? The first step is recognizing these tendencies in yourself. Because if you're not aware, you're simply at the mercy of your impulses. But once you're aware, once you see the patterns in your own behavior, you can start to intervene. You can choose how you respond. You can decide to take a deep breath, to pause, to create space between the event and your reaction. And that space is powerful. It gives you the time to regain control, to think before you act, to evaluate the situation from a place of calmness rather than chaos. But calmness doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean standing idly by while the world falls apart around you. On the contrary, calmness in the face of chaos is an act of choice. It's a decision to engage with the world on your terms, not based on the frenzy of the moment. And when you make that choice, you become someone who is always prepared, someone who is always ready to move when the time is right. When you remain calm, you see opportunities where others see only problems. You can think strategically, you can assess the situation, identify the best course of action, and move with confidence. And that confidence, born from calmness, is what others fear. Because when you've mastered calm in the face of chaos, you become a force to be reckoned with. People will be drawn to you, not because of your position or your title, but because of the steadiness you bring. So how do you get to that point? How do you become the person who stays calm when everything is spinning out of control? It starts by putting yourself in situations that challenge you. It starts by stepping into discomfort and learning to control your emotional responses. The more you train yourself in the small moments, the more natural it becomes in the big ones. The more you can handle pressure, the less pressure will affect you. In the end, the person who can remain calm under pressure is the person who commands attention, the person who others turn to in times of crisis. And when that happens, when you've developed that kind of inner strength, you've built a mind that no one can break. because calmness, when properly cultivated, becomes a weapon. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's powerful. It's the quiet strength that shapes the course of events and leaves the chaos behind. There's something inherently powerful about a person who speaks with precision. It's not about using fancy words or complex sentences. It's about choosing your words carefully and delivering them with such clarity that everyone in the room knows exactly where you stand. The most dangerous people are not the ones who shout the loudest. They're the ones who speak with conviction, with purpose, and with the kind of clarity that demands attention. When they speak, people listen, not because they're trying to impress, but because every word they say has weight, every sentence counts. And this is a skill that can be cultivated. It's not about being born with some natural talent for speaking. It's about learning how to eliminate the fluff, the filler, and the unnecessary noise from your communication. The world is full of chatter. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone is trying to be heard. But the person who speaks with precision doesn't get caught in the noise. They cut through it. They say what needs to be said, and then they stop. They don't ramble. They don't repeat themselves. They don't try to fill space. They choose their words with care, and they deliver them with intention. And that's terrifying to people who are still caught in the noise of their own insecurity and uncertainty. And it starts with understanding that words have power. Most people don't realize how much energy they waste in their speech. How many times do you hear someone speak only to find yourself drifting off because their words don't connect? They say a lot, but they say very little. They talk about everything, but nothing ever lands. And this happens because they haven't yet understood that language is a tool, one that should be wielded with precision, not with carelessness. When you speak with precision, you are cutting away everything that doesn't matter. You are honing your thoughts until they become sharp, and then you are delivering them with purpose. Each word has a purpose. Each phrase is deliberate. There's no uncertainty, no hesitation. You're not waiting for approval, and you're not seeking validation. But you are saying what needs to be said, and you're doing it with the confidence that comes from knowing that your words are exactly what the moment requires. And the most powerful part of this is that precision in speech reflects precision in thought. If you cannot think clearly, you will never speak clearly. If your mind is cluttered, your words will be as well. That's why you have to learn to quiet your mind, to focus on the thoughts that matter, and to cut out the distractions. The more you focus on what's essential, the more your speech will reflect that clarity. It's about learning to prioritize truth over comfort. It's about speaking to be understood, not to be liked. Most people speak to avoid confrontation. They speak to please. But a mind that is shaped by strength speaks to make an impact. It speaks with the intent to challenge, to change, to provoke thought, not just to gain approval. This is a dangerous skill to have because it forces people to listen. It forces them to think. You don't have to scream for attention. You don't have to beg for validation. When you speak with precision, your words demand the space they occupy. People will start to listen, not because you're louder than everyone else, but because you're saying something that matters. And when your words are delivered with power, they will resonate with people on a deeper level. They'll remember them long after you've stopped speaking. This is what makes people with precise speech so terrifying. It's not that they speak in ways that are difficult to understand. On the contrary, they speak in ways that are incredibly clear. But the clarity of their words forces everyone around them to confront the truth of the situation. And the truth is uncomfortable for most people. It exposes their weaknesses, their delusions, and their fears. But the person who speaks with precision is not afraid of this. They are not afraid of discomfort. They speak the truth, not for the sake of hurting others, but for the sake of making them confront what they've been avoiding. The world is full of empty words, people talking for the sake of talking, sharing opinions. They've never truly examined, repeating ideas they've never tested. But when you learn to speak with precision, you stand apart from the crowd. Your words have weight, they have power, they force people to pay attention. And the more you practice this, the more dangerous you become. Not because of the volume of your voice, but because of the weight behind your words. So don't just speak to be heard. Speak with purpose. Speak with precision. Speak in a way that demands respect, not because you want to control others, but because you respect yourself and the power of your own voice. Because when you can speak with precision and power, you become unstoppable. Your mind, your thoughts, and your words will no longer be subject to the noise of the world. They will shape the world instead, and that is terrifying to anyone who's still caught in the chaos. To build a mind so strong it terrifies people, you must first commit to forging a foundation of relentless discipline, unwavering self-honesty, and deliberate action. You must choose to face your weaknesses head-on and tear them down, piece by piece, until they no longer have any power over you. Your strength doesn't come from pretending to be perfect or hiding from the things that challenge you. It comes from the ability to confront your faults, to rise above your fears, and to take consistent action no matter how difficult or uncomfortable it may be. It's the quiet resilience to master your inner dialogue, to speak to yourself with truth and precision, to challenge the negativity that tries to creep in, and to build a mindset that is unshakable. You become dangerous not when you let your emotions and doubts control you, but when you learn to master them and act with clarity, precision, and strength. Feed your mind with the knowledge that matters, knowledge that forces you to grow, to question, to deepen your understanding of the world. Reject the distractions that only serve to waste your time and diminish your potential. The strongest minds are the ones that seek wisdom in the depths, not in the shallows. When you choose to act with purpose, when you choose to cultivate discipline over fleeting feelings, and when you speak with a power that comes from clear intention, you start to build a mind that people can't ignore. You become the person who inspires, who challenges, who makes others pause and question their own weaknesses. The world may throw chaos your way, but you will remain steadfast, anchored in the strength of your own mind. And that, my friends, is the kind of power that cannot be denied. It's the power that terrifies, not because it seeks to dominate others, but because it refuses to be swayed by anything less than the truth. Now, stand tall, speak with precision, act with purpose, and never allow your mind to become anything less than the sharp, relentless force it was meant to be. Your strength is not in how loud you are, but in how unshakably certain you are in your own mind. And that is the kind of power that shapes the world. You see, the truth about who you are isn't revealed in moments of intensity. It's revealed in what you do over and over again. Your identity is not some abstract idea floating in the ether, waiting to be discovered like a hidden treasure in the woods. No. Your identity is something you build brick by brick, day by day. With every small decision, every repeated action, every moment you choose discipline over chaos. This is where consistency becomes not just important, it becomes foundational. Because every time you wake up and make the bed, go to the gym when you don't feel like it, show up for your work, your craft, your calling, what you're really doing is casting a vote for the person you are becoming. It's like you're placing another stone in the structure of your character. And that structure, over time, becomes unshakable. Now, people often ask, how do I become confident? How do I find my purpose? How do I build discipline? The answer is rarely sexy. It's not in a sudden lightning bolt of transformation. It's in the repetition. It's in saying no to distraction and yes to focus. Not once, but again and again and again. And when you do that, you stop relying on motivation, which is fleeting, and you begin to trust yourself. And that trust, that's where confidence is born. That's when you can look in the mirror and say, I know who I am, not because someone told you, not because it was written in a book, but because you've proven it to yourself. Let's not pretend that consistency is easy. It isn't. In fact, it's brutally difficult, especially when results don't show up right away. When you're doing the work and no one's clapping. When the seed is underground and hasn't yet broken through the surface. That's where most people quit, right before the breakthrough. But if you can hold the line, if you can keep doing the right thing when it's hard, when it's quiet, when it's lonely, you will become someone that even your past self wouldn't recognize. Not because you faked it, not because you performed it, but because you earned it. And what's fascinating, what's truly remarkable, is that this principle doesn't just apply to your goals or ambitions. It applies to your relationships, your spiritual life, your emotional stability. Do you want to be someone who loves deeply, then love consistently? Do you want to have faith that can't be shaken? Then show up for it every day. Do you want to be a man or woman of integrity? Then choose honesty again and again, especially when it costs you something, especially then. Because the real magic of consistency is not just in what you do, but in what it reveals. It strips away illusion. It tears down the masks. It shows you in no uncertain terms exactly who you are. And if you don't like what you see, good. That means you've been handed the greatest power of all, the ability to change it. So the question isn't, who am I? The question is, what am I committed to? Consistently. Because that, ultimately, is who you are becoming. That is the path. That is the process. That is the power of consistency. And if you can embrace that, even imperfectly, you will wake up one day and realize you didn't find yourself. You forged yourself. We tend to think of momentum as something mystical, almost magical, something that just happens to us when the stars align or when life suddenly decides to cooperate. But that's not how it works. Momentum isn't a gift the universe gives you. It's a gift you give yourself through repetition, through effort, through that sacred, stubborn refusal to stop moving forward. And here's the thing most people miss. Momentum doesn't begin with a massive leap. It starts with a single step, one action, one decision, and then another, and another. And if you keep going, especially when it's tedious, especially when it's not glamorous, those little efforts begin to compound. Over time, they generate something incredibly powerful: forward motion, energy, clarity, a sense that you're no longer standing still in the swamp of your own excuses, but actually making your way out of it, one stride at a time. Now, people love to romanticize the grind, to talk about going all in and doing the impossible in one grand cinematic moment, but that's not how real change works. Real transformation is subtle, it's slow, it's cumulative. And if you want momentum, if you want to feel like you're finally breaking free from the gravity of procrastination, fear, or self-doubt, it's going to come from consistently doing the next right thing. Even if it's small, even if it's quiet, even if nobody else knows. What's even more profound is that momentum begins to reshape your internal world before you ever see the results in your external one. You start to feel different. Not because your bank account changed overnight or because you suddenly reached your ideal physique or wrote the perfect book, but because you know you're no longer static. You're moving. You're becoming. And that sense of movement, that alone is intoxicating. And yes, there will be resistance. The mind will scream for comfort. The body will beg for ease. The world will whisper that it's okay to slow down, to take a break, to fall back into familiar patterns, and sometimes you will. You'll stumble. You'll slip. That's inevitable. But the key is not whether you stumble, it's whether you get up and keep going. Because when momentum is truly yours, even your failures become part of your fuel. They don't stop you. They push you harder. It's worth saying again, you don't stumble into momentum. You build it. You earn it with repetition, with consistency, with an unshakable commitment to act, even when you don't feel like it, especially then. And once you've built it, you'll realize that the hardest part was not climbing the mountain. It was getting yourself to take the first few steps without knowing how high the summit was or how long it would take. But something beautiful happens when you've been moving long enough. You stop needing to see the entire staircase. You just trust the next step. And eventually you look back and realize how far you've come, not because of one massive leap, but because of 1,000 faithful steps that, when strung together, created the impossible. So if you feel stuck, if you feel like nothing's changing, start where you are. Take one small action, do it again tomorrow, let it snowball. Give yourself that gift. Because once momentum is on your side, you'll understand something most people never will. You were never waiting for a breakthrough. You were waiting to begin. If we have this obsession, especially in today's world, with feeling motivated, people chase it like it's some kind of rare fuel, like they can't take a single step unless the emotional emotional stars align and they feel ready. But let's tell the truth. Motivation is a mood. It's unstable. It comes and goes like the weather. And if your life is anchored to your feelings, if your progress depends on whether or not you feel like showing up, you're going to live a very small, very inconsistent life. The truth is, consistency outweighs motivation every single time. Because motivation is a spark, but consistency, that's the firewood. That's what keeps the flame alive when the spark dies out. And believe me, it will die out. There will be mornings when you feel nothing. Days when the weight of discouragement is heavier than your will to rise. There will be seasons of dryness, of silence, of grinding without glory. That's where the average person stops. That's where the world says, take a break, you've earned it. But that's also the very place where champions are made. Not in the easy moments, but in the ones that feel hollow. The ones where no one's watching and the reward is nowhere in sight. Think about anyone you admire, a writer, an athlete, a leader. They didn't get where they are because they felt inspired every morning. They got there because they trained themselves to show up regardless. They made discipline the master, not emotion. And the irony is, once you live like that for long enough, you start to feel more motivated as a result. Why? Because you begin to trust yourself. You build a track record of following through. You stop being surprised by your own effort. And that creates a kind of inner momentum that emotion alone could never produce. Now, this doesn't mean emotions are useless. No, they're indicators. They show you what matters to you. They can light the path, but they're not designed to carry you down it. That's your job. That's your responsibility. And when you take that responsibility seriously, when you stop needing motivation and start depending on your own will, you become incredibly dangerous to every limitation you once believed in. It's strange, isn't it? We chase inspiration, thinking it will make us strong. But it's actually the boring, unromantic, ordinary act of consistency that builds strength, that builds resilience, that shapes identity. Because every time you do the hard thing when it would have been easier to quit, you're rewriting the narrative you've been telling yourself for years. You're saying, I am not a slave to how I feel. I'm governed by what I've decided matters. That's freedom, that's power. That's where your future begins. So no, don't wait to feel like it. Don't sit around hoping for some surge of passion to carry you forward. Wake up, decide, move, again and again. And when the emotions finally do show up, when motivation finally returns, you'll already be 10 steps ahead because you didn't need it to begin with. You moved anyway. And that's the kind of person the world can't ignore. The one who keeps showing up, not because they feel powerful, but because they become powerful. There's a truth that's uncomfortable for a lot of people to sit with, but it's vital. faithfulness precedes favor. We want the blessing before the obedience. We want the outcome before the discipline. But that's not how life works. That's not how transformation works. And that's certainly not how God works. See, there's something profoundly sacred about showing up day after day, especially when there's no applause, no spotlight, no guarantee of results. Faithfulness isn't glamorous. It's not loud. It doesn't make headlines. But in the quiet places, in the hidden hours, it does something nothing else can. It aligns you with a deeper order, a moral structure, a spiritual rhythm that, when honored consistently, begins to unlock doors you didn't even know existed. Now, when I talk about being faithful, I'm not just talking about religion, though that's part of it. I'm talking about being faithful to the work you've been given, faithful to your responsibilities, faithful to the people who depend on you, faithful to the potential that's been placed in your hands. Because whether you realize it or not, your actions every day are answering a spiritual question: can you be trusted? It's easy to pray for a breakthrough. It's easy to ask for the blessing. But what happens when the blessing requires you to carry a weight? What happens when the promise demands preparation? That's what faithfulness does. It prepares you for the weight of the thing you're asking for. Because God won't pour new wine into an old wineskin. He won't give you what your character can't sustain. And that's why consistency is so important. Because every day you show up and do the right thing, not the convenient thing, not the comfortable thing, but the right thing, you're training yourself to become the kind of person who can handle more opportunity, more responsibility, more blessing. People think they're waiting on God. Often he's waiting on them, waiting to see if they'll be faithful with what they already have before he gives them more. This is the principle of stewardship. It's ancient. If you're faithful with little, you'll be trusted with much. But the inverse is also true. If you neglect the small things, if you treat today like it doesn't matter, why would tomorrow reward you? Why would the future trust you with anything greater? So, be faithful when no one sees. Be faithful when it's hard. Be faithful when you're tired, discouraged, and feel like quitting. Because every time you do, you're sending a message to heaven and to hell about who you are. You're saying, I may not be where I want to be, but I will not be moved. I will not be shaken. I will not retreat. And here's the mystery. The blessing isn't always visible at first. Sometimes it doesn't come in the way you expected, but over time, in ways you can't predict, your faithfulness becomes fertile ground. And what was once a barren field, just repetition and obedience and silence, suddenly begins to bloom, not by accident, but because you tilled the ground when it is dry, because you planted when there was no rain, because you believed that what you were doing mattered, even when there was no proof yet. You want favor? Be faithful. You want promotion? Be faithful. You want peace, clarity, power? Be faithful. Because the highest rewards in life and in eternity are reserved for those who didn't quit when they had every reason to. They just kept showing up. And when heaven sees that, it responds. Because God blesses the faithful, there's something we don't talk about enough in our culture. Something simple, something ancient, and yet something profoundly powerful. Reliability, not brilliance, not charisma, not even talent. Reliability. The world doesn't revolve around the most gifted person in the room. It gravitates toward the one who can be counted on, the one who shows up, the one who follows through, the one whose word means something. You can have all the potential in the world, but if people can't trust you to show up when it matters, that potential becomes a liability instead of an asset. And that's the tragedy for many. So much possibility wasted because they couldn't master one thing. Consistency in character and reliability is character in motion. It's integrity with boots on the ground. It's you saying, you can count on me, not just once, not just when it's convenient, but always. Think about it. Who do you trust most in your life? The person who makes big promises and occasionally dazzles you, or the one who consistently does what they say they'll do? That friend who picks up the phone, that mentor who keeps their word, at that part, who shows up when it's hard, not just when it's fun. The foundation of any real relationship, personal, professional, or spiritual, is built on reliability. Without it, there's no safety, no trust, no growth. And this isn't just about how others see you, it's about how you see yourself. When you become reliable, you start to build an internal sense of order. Your self-respect increases. You stop living in the anxiety of, will I follow through this time? And instead begin to walk in the quiet confidence of, I know I will. That's what consistency gives you. It removes the guesswork. It makes you dependable not only to others, but to your own soul. But of course, reliability is hard. It demands sacrifice. You don't get to bow out just because the mood isn't right or the circumstances are uncomfortable. You have to do the thing you said you would do, even when your emotions are screaming for an exit, especially then. Because every time you keep your word in discomfort, you deepen the roots of who you are. And that's what the world is starving for right now. Not more entertainers, not more influencers. Reliable people. People who follow through. People who take ownership. People who make things better simply by being consistent in their presence, in their principles, in their purpose. You become rare when you become reliable. And what is rare is valued. Employers don't just want talent. They want someone who can be trusted with responsibility, someone who doesn't flinch when it gets difficult, someone who doesn't disappear when the pressure shows up. Relationships thrive when reliability is the baseline, when you don't have to question the other person's commitment, when you know that no matter what, they'll be there. Not perfectly, but faithfully. That creates safety. That creates a space where greatness can actually take root. Even spiritually, reliability reflects something greater. It mirrors divine order. Creation itself is reliable. The sun rises, the tide comes in, the seasons shift, always on time. When you become reliable, you align yourself with that same structure. You participate in that rhythm. You become a stabilizing force in a chaotic world. And let's not kid ourselves. The world does reward that. Maybe not right away, maybe not with fireworks, but over time, reliability compounds. You become the one people call when it matters. The one who gets the promotion, not just because you're skilled, but because you're trustworthy. The one who's chosen for the difficult task, the meaningful work, the legacy assignment. Not because you're the loudest, but because you've proven to be the most steady. So if you feel overlooked, if you feel like others are getting ahead while you're grinding in the shadows, don't lose heart. Stay the course. Be consistent. Be reliable. Because when the storm comes, and it always does, people won't be looking for the flashiest person in the room. They'll be looking for the one who didn't move, the one who didn't bend, the one who could be counted on. And if that's you, you won't have to chase success. You'll become the kind of person success finds. We talk a lot about strength, how to build it, how to project it, how to command respect through it. But what we often forget is that real strength isn't forged in one victorious moment. It's built over time, through pain, through struggle, and most importantly, through consistency. And that's because consistency, true, relentless, everyday consistency, is the death of weakness. Weakness doesn't die in the moment you scream or when you make a dramatic vow to change your life. It dies slowly, quietly, and incrementally when you decide to do the right thing over and over again, even when no one's watching, especially then. That's what kills weakness. That's what makes you dangerous. Not talk, not hype, but the slow, steady, unshakable repetition of discipline. Weakness is like a weed. It thrives in neglect. It grows in the soil of indecision, avoidance. laziness and fear. You don't need to do anything for it to grow. It will, all on its own. But strength is cultivated. It has to be fought for. It has to be earned. And it's earned in the gym when you show up sore, when you lift even when you're tired. It's earned in your studies when you open the book for the 100th time. It's earned in your character when you bite your tongue, take the high road, or stand for what's right, not because it's easy, but because and that kind of strength, that kind of resilience, it doesn't come from occasional efforts. It comes from rhythm, from pattern, from the daily war against comfort and compromise. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, every time you reject the easy path for the hard one, you're digging a grave for the weaker version of yourself. Slowly, silently, but surely. Now, it doesn't feel like that at first. It feels tedious. It feels meaningless. You'll be tempted to think, what's the point? One missed workout won't hurt. One skipped task don't matter. But that's the lie weakness tells you, that it's okay to let up, that the small things are inconsequential. But what you must realize is that the small things are everything. Because habits form your future, not dreams, not intentions, habits. And those are built through consistency, through the mundane, the repetitive, the unsexy grind. You want to be mentally strong, emotionally steady, spiritually grounded? You don't get there by waiting for the right moment. You get there by building systems into your life that do not waver, by showing up when you don't feel like it, by choosing responsibility when everything inside you screams for escape. That's when real transformation begins. Not when it's easy, but when it's brutal. Because weakness wants to survive. It will beg for comfort. It will argue for distraction. It will whisper, tomorrow is fine. You've done enough. No one will notice. But you will notice. You'll feel it in your gut when you let yourself down. You'll see it in the results you never get. You'll hear it in your own voice when it cracks under pressure, when it trembles in moments that require resolve. That's what happens when weakness wins. But there's good news. You don't have to be extraordinary to destroy it. You don't need to be the smartest, the fastest, or the most talented. You just need to be committed. You just need to keep showing up one day at a time, one choice at a time. And the beautiful thing is, weakness can't survive that. It can't withstand consistency. It has no defense against a person who refuses to quit. Eventually, the excuses stop working. Eventually, the resistance gets weaker. And eventually, the strength you've been building in silence speaks for itself, loudly, unmistakably. People will wonder where it came from, how you became so composed under pressure, how you developed such control, such endurance. And the truth will be simple. You buried your weakness in the grave of your discipline. And that burial doesn't happen all at once. It happens through the alarm clock you stop snoozing, through the meal you prepare when fast food is tempting, through the apology you make when pride wants to hold you back, through the long hours of focused effort when everyone else is distracted. These are the weapons. They're not dramatic, they're not glamorous, but they are deadly to the parts of you that keep losing. The version of you that gives up, that doubts, that breaks under pressure, that version begins to die the moment you decide to become consistent. And with each passing day, that version loses its grip until one day you look in the mirror and realize something powerful. You are no longer defined by your struggles. You're defined by your discipline. You're no longer the person who starts and stops. You're the one who follows through. You've become dangerous to every excuse, every fear, every obstacle that used to paralyze you. And maybe people won't notice right away. That's fine. You're not doing it for attention. You're doing it because you've made a promise to yourself. and you're going to keep it every single day. Because that's what real strength is. Not noise, not image, but follow through, fortitude, fire. So don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for perfect circumstances. Start now. Start small, but for God's sake, don't stop. Because every time you stay the course, every time you refuse to back down, you are delivering another blow to the weakness that once ruled you. And one day soon, you'll look back and realize that version of you is gone. You didn't defeat it with a single act. You destroyed it through repetition, through resolve, through unwavering, relentless consistency. Because consistency is not just a tool for success, it is the very death of weakness. It's this consistency is everything. It is the bridge between who you are and who you could become. It's not talent that shapes destiny. It's not luck. It's not even motivation. It's your ability to keep showing up, to stay the course, to move forward even when everything inside you says, stop. It's in the quiet mornings when you rise early, the late nights when you push through, the ordinary days that you refuse to waste. That's where greatness is forged. Because consistency builds identity. It creates momentum. It outlasts fleeting motivation. It draws the blessing of God, the trust of others, and the kind of self-respect that no praise can replicate. The world rewards the reliable, not the loudest. And your weakness, the fear, the doubt, the excuses, they don't stand a chance when met with daily, deliberate action. You don't have to be the best right now, you just have to start. And then you have to keep going, one step, one decision, one day at a time. You become powerful not when everything is perfect, but when you commit to moving forward regardless. That's the kind of person who changes their life. That's the kind of person who changes the world. So go, be consistent, and let the world and your own soul see what happens when you refuse to quit.